Hey everyone, we're at Preppershack again, doing a little reconnoitering, looking at new books, and being amazed at what's going on in politics. Trump's truly bringing some changes. We just have to be patient. We're going to jump right into another one of the novelettes, Martha's Home for Wayward Preppers.
Yeah, I like the novelettes. They tell you little short stories what happened to everybody after we got out of Atlanta. That's what's kind of cool about my stories. You wonder what happened to the character, or even if somebody wandered off somewhere, they can appear in another book, or I'll write one about them if somebody asks or whatever.
Yeah, folks ask about them all the time.
Anything about anybody. I think I've kind of, over the years, I got them all the way to old age, and back to the lake and over to Florida, and we're still hanging in here, and still original characters pop in and out, say hi every once in a while.
The stories continue.
People that the original trilogy everybody likes, so I told them a few more stories about it.
Alright, we'll jump right in. Martha's Home for Wayward Preppers. Chapter 1, The Great Arrival. Stewart and Melanie finally caught their breath after having had Dump Truck grab them both up off their feet in a bear hug and swinging them around in little circles as he did a bit of a happy dance. "How'd you find each other? Is that David's truck? Are you okay?" Dump let out a stream of astonished questions to the pair's sudden appearance from the apocalyptic city of Atlanta. "Well, yes, that's David's truck. Stewart and I met by chance or fate and are both fine," Melanie said, laughing. "Good to see you, my old traveler buddy," Stewart said, beaming at Dump. "I've been thinking about you guys off and on for so long now. I've been worried to death that I could have done something to make it easier on you. But you know, times being what they are, it's a miracle we even got a chance to meet again," Dump said, putting his arm around Stewart and grinning like no tomorrow at Melanie. "It's been a rough go of it, that's for sure. Does the offer still stand to join the truck clan?" Stewart said, tapping Dump on the shoulder and smiling at him. "Sure it does. My cousin Martha'll be happy to see you both. I told her all about the two of you several times. Boy, she's going to be surprised you've made it here, and with David's truck to boot," Truck said, looking over the old 1985 GMC Jimmy 4x4 that had somehow miraculously started when 90% of the cars in the world didn't. "We just picked up that vehicle a few hours ago. Otherwise you would have seen us on those bicycles a day or so from now," Melanie said, reaching out to pat Dump's mule, who was taking an interest in the meeting. "That's old Saul. He's pretty friendly for an old beast, just as long as you're not asking him to do some work," Dump said, as Stewart also gave the animal a pat. "He knows he's going to have to do work when Martha puts that stupid straw hat on him. He doesn't much like the sound of horns either, so I'm glad you didn't blow yours," Dump said, still wearing a smile as big as the Kool-Aid pitcher promotional guy. "I've been around horses and such, so I didn't want to spook him. Not sure it even works. The radio is fried, but check this out, Dumpy. It has air conditioning," Melanie said, like it was the biggest treasure in the world. Dump guessed it was indeed quite a wonderful and rare item to possess these days. "You're going to have to let me and Martha sit a spell in it this evening. This heat is trying to parboil us, and I'm sure she would find it the biggest blessing in the world to have just a few moments of cool air," Dump said, looking over the load it had on and in it. "You bring any food?" he said, looking at them inquisitively and hopefully. "We brought a pillowcase full of cans, plus David probably has several days' worth stashed in the back of the truck there. Is food tight?" Melanie said worriedly. "Oh, we're short on a few things and long on others, but we're doing okay. Martha and the folks been helping out some travelers here and there, so arriving with any kind of food to help lengthen the pantry will ensure you'll be well received. Right now we don't have any house guests. The Hopsings are in the shed, and there is one prepper couple staying down at the old Halstead place, though they're leaving out in a day or so after getting some rest. Martha is kind of particular about who she lets stay a day or so, and who has to move on," Dump said, still enjoying the wonder of it all, and seeing his two new friends return to the fold and feeling relieved as to their well-being. "What are Hopsings?" Stewart asked, trying to understand Southern colloquial English. "I was wondering that too," Melanie said, waiting for Dump to explain. "Oh, that's just what we call them. They're a nice Asian couple I found on the roadside one day. They just sort of stayed on and moved in. It was about to start raining, and I was riding old Saul here back from Philburn's when I saw them on the side of the road. Old Papa-san had the biggest meat cleaver I've ever seen, and his wife had a wok she was threatening to bean me with. And they both sort of dared me to mess with them. I think that boy of theirs would have jabbed me with a chopstick too if I hadn't convinced them I was friendly, Dump said, laughing at the memory. Anyway, we kind of did sign language at each other about how it was going to rain and how I would give them a roof over their head and something to go in that fancy Chinese frying pan they had. Then I took them home to Martha's. They don't know very many American words, but the man started jabbering at Martha when he saw that big wood stove in the house. Me cook, says he, and she said, he looks like Hop Sing off the TV show Bonanza, the cook that used to work for the Cartwrights on the Ponderosa. Get this, every time Martha tries to do some work around the kitchen, that wife of his starts saying, me do, so we call her Me Do. Her son we call He Do, because once old Hop Sing saw me going to feed the chickens or gather eggs, he started saying, he do. I about got stuck with a new name too. Since when they want to do something, they come to me and say, you do, Dump said, laughing, hard enough to make his belly shake at how the family had got adopted and named. They're real names we can't pronounce, so we sort of shortened them so it don't sound so much like we're picking on them, but they answer to most everything with nice smiles and understanding. They can't say truck, so I am Dimpy. Martha sounds like Moutha, and Ray is Way, Truck said, obviously fond of his rescued highway charges. Sounds like you got a house full already. We don't want to impose, Melanie said, thinking once again about going to her granny's house in the opposite direction. Don't give it another thought. We got plenty of room and options. You both are most definitely welcome, Dump said, putting his friends at ease. It sounds like the Hop Sings are right handy to have around. Hope we will be too, Melanie said, giggling and enjoying how warm a reception Dump had given them. Oh, I know it's going to be nice having you around, Dump reassured her, and his face colored a bit as he thought how maybe he had said something wrong. Stewart picked up on Dump's discomfort, and remembering a conversation with David that maybe this big old boy had a schoolboy crush on Melanie, he decided to poke a bit of fun at him. Hey, I'm here too, Stewart said, smirking and feigning hurt feelings. Well, I meant, damn you, Stewart, you know what I meant, Dump finally said huffily. We know, Melanie said charmingly, and patted the big behemoth's shoulder, totally disarming Dump and deepening his blush. Well, we're only about a half mile to the house. Let's go get you moved in. Martha hates Hop Sing in her kitchen, so get ready for a battle of who cooks for you. Either way is good eats. Ray and I got a small still going on her stove that might interfere with her cooking up supper, but I doubt it slows her down much, Dump said, explaining the summer kitchen setup they were using for most meals. I'd just soon not be making shine in the house, but Hop Sing won't let us near his stove, and Martha won't let us brew down her blackberry wine without her near-constant supervision. Oh, you're making brandy, Stewart said, smiling.
Yeah, Mr. MBB YouTube notification off.
Picture of a beautiful old potbelly stove.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What happened?
Buddy George had one sitting out there. I fussed at it, came out of my office. I used to have 2 rocking chairs and a potbelly stove going nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
At my gemology store, and George ended up with it. He heated with it one time. We had that big military tent. Then he had it sitting out there in the rain. I'm like, hey, buddy.
I love those old stoves. Exactly. Liquor is getting hard to find, and we thought we would start making up some trade goods or something for personal consumption, Dump said, giving Stewart a high five. When the Hop Sings came to stay, Martha put them in the shed next to the barn, and because they fought over the kitchen so much, old Papa-san moved the wood heater out of the house and everything else in the shed to the fence while they cleaned it out. He left the stove out by the fence and cooks out there all the time now, I guess not to heat up the house. He even has his own setup to use the well water for washing up dishes and laundry. He really can cook, I give you that. I often wander by and get me some double dinners, Dump guffawed, and explained that Hop Sing would cook for him and his families at times, then bring food up to the house for the rest of the clan to eat. Even though Martha made faces when he did this, she had to admit he was a whiz with spices that rivaled her own award-winning country fare. Dump told them that having the Hop Sings around wasn't always good food and friendly kitchen rivalries, though. They insisted on fertilizing their small plot of ground that, through many confusing hand gestures and pleadings, they would help work the main fields that supplied the farmstead, but that they insisted they have a kitchen garden next to their house of their own. They use animal and human manure for their fertilizing in their little garden, and as bad as they thought it wasteful for the other residents of the farm not to do the same, the food harvested from their garden was equally distasteful to the western minds of those it was offered to. Particularly bad were the constant offers by Hidu to collect any manure in sight from the animals, and his not understanding that the house had indoor plumbing that didn't require his attention. Martha had freaked one day when the plumbing was being worked on, and she had to use the old outhouse, and came out the door to see Hidu standing there holding a blue plastic kid's sand shovel and bucket, and thinking he was going to do his duty to harvest any night soil available. Dump warned Stewart and Melanie, "That little bastard will watch you if you go off to the bushes to relieve yourself, and will collect anything that hits the dirt to go into Papa Son's growing collection of compost piles around the place." "You figure out what part of Asia they are from yet?" Stewart said, contemplating his travels and people he had met. "I tried, and everyone else has tried that, but we are lacking good communications. They say no Chinese, laugh if you say Japanese, get mad about Vietnamese, make faces about Korean, and looks at you like you're stupid if you say Philippine. Ask if from Thailand, they put their heads together and bow a bit, but shake their heads no, so we're at a loss. Hop Sing just looks at you and puts his thumbs up and says something like Mong, and goes back to silly grinning at you and agreeing to anything if you try to ask more." "Ah, they sound like Hmong, maybe. Mountain people from China, Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand borders," Stewart said astutely. The tragedy of the Hmong people was that they fought with the U.S. against the North Viet Cong, and then basically got abandoned after the war. Except for the lucky ones in camps along the borders, who managed to escape and immigrate to the U.S., Stewart continued, relying on the histories he had heard of through the UN interventions of mistreatment or from people he had personally met and been exposed to. "Well, that's interesting to know. I was wondering how they might have gotten here and what nationality they might have been," Dump said, as he held the reins on his fidgeting mule that was eager to go home. "Martha's house is just up around the corner up there. You follow me, and I'll introduce you before getting you settled in," Dump said, mounting his mule and then taking off at a quick trot. Chapter 2. Martha's Home for the Wayward. Yeah, I love him. Stewart and Melanie pulled up into the driveway and parked next to the front porch of the house. Martha came bustling out the front porch screen door and looked over the visitors. "Who did you bring home this time, Bill?" Martha said, while smiling down at the pair. Martha never used Dump's nickname, and neither Stewart nor Melanie had ever heard his real name, so they were taken aback for a moment. "This is the Stewart and Melanie I've been telling you about," Dump said happily to his cousin. "Well, land sakes, I finally get to put faces to the names. Why, there ain't a day goes by that Bill doesn't retell the story about you all and David's adventure," she said, hugging Melanie and then grabbing onto Stewart for good measure. "Come on up and have a seat on the porch and tell us what you've been up to and how you managed to find us," Martha said, escorting everyone to the line of rocking chairs and benches arranged along the front porch. "That's David's truck, Martha," Dump said, beaming a smile. "Well, where's David then? Is he back too?" Martha said, confused, but happy at the thought. "We don't know where David is, Martha. He and Bill, drew me maps to find the truck and to find this house if I needed to leave the city," Stewart said, wishing for more news on David himself. "When did David leave?" Melanie asked. "Oh, he's been gone better than a month or so now. He got on an old tractor that still ran and lit out for Montgomery," Dump said, hoping David was all right. "Well, I'd be gobsmacked. I bet that was a journey. I sure would like for him to tell me about some day. David riding the highways on a tractor. Ha! That would have been a sight to see, too, Stewart said, chuckling at the notion. Well, if anybody was going to make it, it would be David, Martha said, for some reason defensively. Aye, that he would indeed. I just meant that would be an amusing sight, to imagine David rolling up to some stranger on that God-forsaken interstate and trying to give them a lift. I bet he had the bonnet of that old tractor covered with riders, sitting every which way hitching a ride home, Stewart said, smiling at the mental image he had created for himself. It was a pretty danged old tractor. He might have busted down somewhere and had to walk himself home, Dump said worriedly. Don't listen to Mr. Sunshine here. David made it home just fine. I got me a premonition, Martha said, speaking of her feminine wiles and eerie knack for knowing about the health or welfare of someone she liked. Where Ray and the Hopsings at? Dump asked Martha. Ray borrowed that old 1940 Dozier off Philburn. They're gathering up all the manure from the cattle to probably put in one of those poo pits them Hopsings seem to like so much, Martha said, talking about the compost heaps. Never have seen a bunch of folks like duty as much as them Hopsings. They should be along directly. It's getting close to mealtime. At least I didn't have them underfoot while I was getting lunch close to ready. Which reminds me, I better go see to a few things. Me-do butchered a couple of chickens. I had a feeling we were going to have us some company today, just didn't know who. Bill, did you warn them about them veggies the Hopsings grow? You be careful if that old scallywag Mr. Hopsing offers you anything raw. Cripes, be careful if it's cooked too. I know Me-do saved them chicken feets and gizzards for something, and it's liable to end up on your dinner plate if you don't watch out, Martha said, rising and going back into the house.
Like I said, over to Spot on the radio, find all the books, and he got up to Stewart in the longest walk when they were all put together. So you can't have all that without understanding Martha Sumter and Wayward Preppershack.
Yeah.
Got a hand with the hot snakes some more.
I love them. That puts it all together. Martha fusses about them a lot, but she actually treats them more like naughty pets at times than she means to, 'cause it's so hard to understand them and their ways. She couldn't get by near as good as she has it now without all their help. She said Me-do is going to have a baby, and now she has new arguments to grouse about her trying to help out with every little thing. Hey, here comes Ray now. The Hopsings be along shortly, I guess. Did I tell you to expect them to dress up for dinner when we got guests? Now, that's a sight to see, Dump said, chuckling, and everyone started to walk down towards the barn to greet Ray. Melanie looked at what had to be the oddest tractor she had ever seen pulling up. She hadn't seen many tractors in her time, but she was sure that it must be one of the odder makes of its vintage. Hey, Ray, Dump bellowed. You ain't going to believe who we got for house guests today, Dump said, moving quickly towards him and reminding him that he had friends named Stewart and Melanie. I'm pleased to meet you. Dump has told me lots about you, Ray said, extending his hand to Stewart and then doing the same with Melanie. The group chatted about how interesting it was to reunite like this, and waited until the Hopsings wandered up to join the group. He-do immediately shyly grabbed Dump Truck's little finger and held onto his big buddy's hand as introductions were made. A lot of hand gestures, funny mispronouncing of names, and laughter occurred as Stewart and Melanie met the charming family. Melanie became Minnie, and Stewart finally settled on Stewie, so they could be called something somewhat resembling their names by the Hopsings. You do, Papa Hopsing said to Dump as he gestured for him to follow, and Truck made a who-knows face and followed the little man off in the direction of the Sings' home. Dump tried to figure out what Hopsing wanted as he gestured towards some cracked corn chicken feed in the barn. Evidently he was asking Dump if he could have some for himself, but Dump for the life of him couldn't figure out what for. Sure, you can have some, he said, gesturing, and the little man looked pleased. They left the barn and went back up to the house, where Martha and Me-do were busy setting plates on the outdoor picnic table. He-do followed Dump around like a puppy, and was often seen holding onto Dump's shirt or hand or pants leg in some fashion, as he curiously surveyed the new strangers in his world. Martha had really made a good spread of food for everyone from the produce off her small farm, and Melanie and Stewart ate fried chicken and biscuits until they thought they would burst. Hopsing managed to sneak into Martha's kitchen under the guise of bringing in the dishes and made off with a small bag of pickling lime. "That was the best meal I ever had," Melanie said to Martha, who beamed from the praise she got from her and everyone else. "Well, we can't have Sunday dinner all the time, but we do make pretty good around here. I'm going to make a sweet potato pie for dinner later on today, and Hopsing can make the dinner on his stove," Martha said, and Hopsing brightened and said, "Me cook," and pointed to himself. "But no chicken feet," Martha said adamantly, while making her hand into a claw and waving it at him, which he definitely didn't understand, and mimicked making soup out of them. No chicken feet whatsoever," Martha scolded, waggling her finger and shaking her head to a less than happy but understanding Hopsing. "Malta come," Hopsing said, heading towards the house, ostensibly to get permission for something or other out of the kitchen. "Did he just call her mother?" Melanie said to Ray. "No, that's the way he says her name," Ray replied, chuckling, but obviously as fond of the family as is Martha. Hopsing indicated to Martha he wanted about a dozen or so eggs, some flour and garlic, and then started looking over her canned goods. He settled on a can of chicken broth and indicated he wanted more. After much gesturing, Martha indicated she didn't have any more, and offered him some chicken bouillon instead. He evidently didn't know what it was, so Martha showed him the tablespoon and told him how many spoons equaled a can of broth when added to water. He looked at her skeptically, but took a few spoonfuls back with him in a little baggie. He gathered up several eggplants that were sitting in a basket from today's garden harvest, and gave Martha a thumbs-up gesture. Martha and Hopsing returned and sat at the picnic table with the group, who were discussing what was going on in the surrounding towns. Hopsing chattered at his wife and son for a minute, and then Hidu picked up the supplies and headed back to their home to get the materials out of the sun and go on some other errand his father had been seen to be explaining to him carefully. "I got no idea what he's cooking for dinner, but it has lots of eggs in it," she said, regarding the cook for the evening. Not hot, she said in his direction, indicating her tongue. Hopsing evidently understood her and held his hands up and nodded his head, while smiling like he was assuring her whatever culinary thing he had in mind wasn't going to be too spicy for her. "Bill, you keep an eye on him when he is cooking and watch what he does. I don't have time to supervise him because I got my own baking to do. Try to make him get vegetables out of our garden and not his, too," Martha advised him, thinking in advance. "You know he don't like me hanging around when he cooks, Martha, just like someone else I know," Dump said, complaining. "Well, you try and watch him anyway. What's he got doing, I wonder? He should be back by now," Martha said, looking off in the direction the boy had gone. "It will be fine, Martha. Quit your niggling," Ray said, patting her on the leg. "I just don't want to end up with the squirts or worse from some strange dish he can come up with," Martha said, eyeing Hopsing again, who noticed he was being talked about. "Number one cook, me," Hopsing said, pointing finger at himself and having his wife repeat the same phrase, pointing at him and holding up her finger in a number one gesture. Stewart decided it was time to change the subject, and asked Ray what was going on with the preppers that Dump had mentioned staying up the road. Stewart had not realized before talking to David that some folks had been preparing for this sort of event for years, and he just now had started wondering what he would have put in his own bug-out bag if he had had the opportunity. He wasn't too worried about that now, as he had David's preps that he had yet to investigate thoroughly. He had better reconsider that thinking, he thought. Melanie somewhat had the rights to some of those too, even though David had given him the keys and blessings to take his stuff if he could make it to that location, which he might not have been able to do without Melanie's help. "I will think more on this later. Pretty much everything is now shared, and I shouldn't be thinking in terms of mine or yours," Stewart considered. "Those folks should be leaving in the morning. I told them I was going to come by there later and arrange to transport them a few miles down the road in the wagon to save them some boot leather. The big decision is whether they want to go to Philburn's trading post or stay on their current direction of travel. I hope they just want to keep on going, because I don't like setting folks off in that direction," but their supplies are short, Ray said. Why don't you like that direction? Melanie asked, trying to understand Ray's reluctance. I tell you why. That damned sheriff over there now hangs out around the trading post, and has taken it upon himself to require you to register when you go on the grounds. You have to check your guns, and he searches your stuff. He's got some prisoners that he rents out to do farm work. Some of them are folks that we dropped off in that direction. He decided to give them sentences for stealing food from a vendor or whatever else he accused them of. Thing is, he decides how long is fair, and that they have got to serve, and he is becoming somewhat of a bully, Dump said with an angry scowl. Well, he ain't that bad, but those deputies of his are a bit high-handed. They just showed up one day and started to sort of take over. Philburn says he can't do anything about them, but I think they're in cahoots together. They say the outlying towns around here have hung a few people, mostly strangers for one thing or another too, Ray said, acting like he didn't want to get into those stories. Blimey, things haven't been out of control that long, that the constabulary should be creating fiefdoms, Stewart said, shocked. It's a lot worse than you might think, Stewart. Folks have been streaming through here, even though we're off the beaten path, in groups of 2 to 20. The resources are not here to either feed or control them. We helped everyone best we could at first, but there are just too many mouths to feed, and too many folks think being able to walk down the street carrying a rifle makes it the Wild West again. Ordinary folks that lived here their whole lives now got to contend with folks that think they got a right to survive better than somebody else because they're hungrier. We had to hold up in the house for weeks because some cowardly fool would take a shot at you and think about robbing your body or house. The signs in front of the road David had us put out deterred a lot of folks, but the way the signs were treated by those that they didn't send on gave us an indication of their intentions. I don't know if it was good or bad to have the signs up for those that just didn't care and looked for targets, Ray said, thinking about a particularly bad day. I know it's been rough in the city, but I had not thought about being on the outskirts. People that make it at least this far must be desperate enough or not thinking enough for anything, Stewart replied. You need to learn to shoot, Stewart. I got a 12-gauge double-barrel coach gun you can use for now that doesn't require too much finesse, but armed around here every day is a necessity. That prepper couple is armed with a shotgun and a .22 rifle, not knowing them as well as we should. We got them staying in an abandoned house for our safety. I don't like folks I don't really know on the property to be armed, Ray replied, considering his offer of arming a yet unknown guest. These are friends, Ray. Martha said we got to have more folks if we're going to hang on and protect this place. She also gets whoever stays in that old house to do some work on it to make it better for the next. Those preppers down there, I would think would side with us in a heartbeat if we needed them, but they're heading towards their own bug-out location, so we're just playing way station like with the old stage coaches, Dump said. I didn't mean anything against your friends, Dumpy. I'm just saying I got a problem with Martha's adopt-a-puppy attitude towards those that are of the prepper ilk. She's damn sure mean enough to those that have nothing and look like they won't contribute. No offense, Martha, Ray quickly said, and then clarified the position. I know we got to draw the line in the sand somewhere, just to look out for our own survival. Where that line is drawn, I just don't know. We got to manage our own, but I think telling everyone with just the shirt on their back to just keep moving is wrong in some ways, Ray said. There's a mineral spring about a quarter-mile from here that just needs a bit of a clean-up and a sign to give folks water. Used to be folks from miles around in the days would come by to get some healing water. We would fix up the area and make a sign for that, says courtesy of the truck clan, and explain it's safe to drink and to avoid our house as a favor, Dump said. That worked about as well as what got your and your half-cousin's place burned. I told you not to be too forceful in your messaging on signs, and somebody went and firebombed it at night, Martha said, thinking about how the skull and crossbones, etc. on signs had probably just made someone scared enough to get particularly nasty about how they were going to rob it. Don't go there, Dump said, and remembering how lucky he was to be alive, because he was out that night fishing, and arrived to find the cousin dead and houses burned to the ground. I am a-plenty sorry, Bill, but these people we see nowadays ain't no stray dogs that follow you home with manners and gratitude. They humans and sons of Satan when it comes to being unappreciative. Robbing you or murdering you in your bed is more in their character, Martha said resolutely, and ending the conversations with a no-answers-back look. I don't see the difference between giving them a cup of water so they don't fall out in front of the place, or driving them off at the point of a gun when they're desperate for one. But I give you my promises, and it's as you want, Dump said, and then looked at Melanie for support. What kind of mineral water are you calling healing waters, Bill? Melanie said, directing attention to his mention of the spring. Well, we are right up the road from Lithia Springs, and this water that comes out an old pipe on the side of the road is supposed to have some similar properties of minerals and such that are good for the body. It tastes kind of like if you poured water into a glass after you got done drinking the milk in it. It's supposed to be good for you, Dump said, happy that Melanie had an interest in taking his side. I would like to see this place, Dump. How long has it been there? Stewart asked, while Martha squirmed at possibly being corrected. About 1890, they say. Used to be folks would do the take the waters thing to ensure health or recover from diseases we didn't have cures for back then, at spas all over the place, Dump said, happy he was the center of attention in a positive light at the moment. You say it's a free-flowing spring? Stewart said, anticipating a possible new project to make some much-needed money. Dump laughed heartily and reminded everyone of the water's free rent a cup $1 stand where he and David first met Stewart. By that twinkle in his eye, I imagine he has an equally enterprising idea to benefit the truck tribe and still help the vagabonds. Before Stewart could form a reply, Hidu came running up to Hopsing, pulling a battered but freshly scrubbed old radio flyer wagon. What do you suppose that's for? Dump said, pretending to admire how good the kid had cleaned it up to the adolescent's evident joy. He is too big to want to ride in it. Maybe he wants you to put something in it, Melanie suggested. Yeah, but what? Martha commented. Hopsing looked it over and evidently approved as Midu patted her son affectionately. I have no idea what they're up to, Stewart said as he watched Hopsing start towards the red and white GMC they arrived in and peered into the back and came back momentarily to pull on Dump's arm, saying, You do. I guess he's going to help you unpack, Dump said, following him towards the truck. See if you can get him to understand. Take out only the small packs holding our clothes. I see an advantage leaving David's Prepper bug-out bags in there for now, Stewart said. Dump opened the hatch on the back, and quick as a shot, Hopsing grabbed the big orange water cooler like you see on the back of utility trucks, and looked confused when the ice chest he wanted to didn't move, because it evidently had something heavy in it. What's in this ice chest? Dump called, as everyone started towards the truck to see what was going on. I don't know, we didn't get into it, Stewart said as he was walking up. David had put a Flectar camouflage rain jacket over most of it, and had a rucksack parked in front of it, and they hadn't checked all the Prepper goodies in the vehicle yet. Damn thing weighs a bit. Watch out, Hidu. Let me snatch this thing out, Dump said, moving the boy who was trying to be helpful, but was just in the way, bodily aside. Dump pulled it over an assortment of loose as well as arranged gear, and opened it up and looked inside. Looks like a bunch of MRE bags and some kind of candy bar-looking things, he said to his gathered audience. He pulled a couple of bags of it out and read labels aloud, such as pound cake, chocolate chip cookie, and the candy bars things were something called Millennium Bars. Looks like he's been collecting desserts and snacks out of military ration packages.
I forgot I used to do that way back in the days. You remember when I had that thing that come up there? It was packed as a bug-out vehicle.
Yep.
I had what I had in there, and that's what I managed to accumulate the most of. You know, I think the sportsman guy had to sell off 144 pieces or whatever for a price.
Sweet.
I loaded it up. I said, well,
Get him
I
while
have
you
meals,
can.
but I got snacks out there. So I'll work this out, you know.
Awesome. Those silver-looking packages I recognize as emergency water I used to see in overboard bags when I was in the Navy, Ray said, joining in the investigation of the contents of the chest. Hidu had already placed the water cooler on the back of the wagon, and was waiting impatiently for something to do, while listening to the babble of foreign voices, and looking at his father for direction. Hopsing reached out and looked at a few packages of MRE, and mocked putting them in a big sack towards Dump. I think he just wants the cooler, There's a box of garbage bags in here we can transfer to, but I say we just bring the whole thing up to the house and add its contents to Martha's pantry and get them out of this hot truck, Dump said, looking towards Martha for approval. I guess that'd be best, but throw it in the root cellar for now. I'm not eating that stuff unless we need to, Martha said, wringing her hands at whether or not it was still fit to eat in her opinion. Dump picked up the over 100-pound container like it was a sack of potato chips and started towards the house, which upset the Hopsings no end. Dump set the ice cooler down and said, irritated, "What, you want something?" Hopsing and the rest of his brood touched the cooler and said, me, and waited for him to respond. They want the cooler, Stewart said. If it's all right with you, they can have it, but I think the food in it will store better at the house, Truck said, trying to figure out what was transpiring. That okay with you, Melanie? Stewart asked his intrigued but confused travel partner. It's David's, but yours now, I guess. Stewart, do what you want, she said, making Stewart's job of who had rights to what easier. But how do you tell someone they can borrow but not keep it if they don't speak English? Stewart pointed at himself and all the Hopsings, and then the cooler, and then back to himself, and made a small bit measurement with his thumb and forefinger, indicating a short amount of time. The Hopsings gabbled a bit to each other, and Hopsing Sr. extended his hand to Stewart to shake, evidently to agree to some unknown or understood terms. Dump picked up the entire thing, and a quite irate Hopsing clan chattered at him all the way to the porch before he put it down, and said, "No!" like he was telling a misbehaving cat not to do something, which started he-do crying, and Dump was beside himself what to do next as he started patting and tried to console the boy. He thinks you were taking the box away from him after Stewart said they could have it, Martha said, gathering the boy up in a loving and smiling hug. Just starting to take everything out of it, they will put up the contents themselves once they understand, she said as Meadow walked up and hugged Martha and the boy, looking at her imploringly. The contents of the ice chest were soon emptied on the porch, and the boy laughingly ran to get his wagon to retrieve his hard-won prize, as Papa San Hopsing came up and grabbed Dump's hand with both of his, and put his hands together in a praying position, and touched his forehead, and smiled once again, gestured with praying hands at Dump, and said something like CD. He's given you a Buddha blessing, Stewart said, doing the same motions back to an amazed Hopsing, as his wife also repeated the motion in gratitude to Dump and Stewart. Hopsing looked perplexed, and thinking for a moment, he then imitated someone firing an automatic rifle, puffed out his chest, and pretended to give a salute, and then touched Stewart on the chest. No soldier, me. You? Stewart said, patting Hopsing's shoulder, speaking in pidgin English. Good GI, Hopsing said proudly, making sure he carefully touched his shoulder, where 2 stars indicating rank would have appeared had he been in uniform. I think he might have been a general or something. Hard to say what a foreign rank is, Stewart said, while doing his best stiff Brit snap and polished salute interpretation, complete with the raising of both feet and stomping, which made everyone laugh and got a completed correct response from Hopsing with a grin at the end of the performance. Dump placed the cooler in the wagon, and He-Do gave him a hug, while the rest of the Hopsing clan chattered happily. I don't know what they got in mind, but evidently they needed those items for something, Martha said, watching the Hopsings heading back towards home. You say somebody named Philburn was the last to see David? Stewart asked Dump. Yeah, why? I pretty much told you all we know, Dump said. Oh, I don't know. I kind of feel a bit obliged to him, and that truck runs, so maybe someday, maybe we could take a road trip and go see him. Not that I am in any hurry to give him back his stuff, Stewart said, laughing. Ah, that would be a big day if you, me, and Melanie showed up in his truck at his doorstep around happy hour, Dump said, chuckling at the notion. From the notes we compared, I think David declares happy hour at first opportunity, because as he used to put it, it's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere, Stewart said, laughing. I bet he would flip if he saw that alcohol still me and Ray got going, Dump said, waving to Ray to come over and join the conversation. What's up? Ray said, wandering over with Martha in tow. Stewart wants to go see Philburn, see if he knows where David went to, Dump said, seeking approval.
Show him that 5 o'clock somewhere. Like I got one over there.
From Ray and Martha.
You need to take a sip. Back for a second. So, a lot of people get on me about putting alcohol, this, that, and the other in my books, but they haven't definitely been to a hurricane party. They haven't had sitting around the barracks. You ain't got nothing to do. If you all get drink, that's what you do. It's camaraderie. Especially country folks know how to make whiskey or whatever. We tend to like to sit.
In times of the apocalypse, it's a great stress reliever.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, then gathered people in. A lot of people said, you wouldn't take anybody in this and that. I'm like, hey, it's a farm. It's a working farm. It's amazing how much work goes in. You know, people actually work so everybody can eat. Otherwise, you're just going to wear yourself out. Then there's got to be people to guard. You know, just picking peas, just sitting there snapping beans on the porch. I mean, there's always something going on.
Yep. Always plenty to do.
You can use extra hands if you got some good people, you know. I'm not saying to everybody take anybody in, but, you know, just keep in mind don't run everybody off either, you know.
I like shooting everybody for to protect your wheat, and then you don't have anybody to help you plant it.
There you go. No bakers, no millers, no, you know, people cut the firewood to get the stove going.
Yep.
You know, put the fence up, keep the cows out of it, I mean, there's stuff going on all the time, you know. So, people don't consider that. They have strange ideas about farms and preppers. I think they just think they're going to sit in their house and then miraculously before their food runs out, they get done looting, you know. Society's going to come back, but it's going to be after somebody out there. Okay, let's donate the gas to this tractor. Y'all know what you're doing. Now y'all listen to the farmer over here. And
it's going to take a lot of cooperation.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. All right.
Last we heard, he went to Montgomery. I never asked Philburn if he left any kind of address, Ray said. You still steer clear of the sheriff, Bill. I need a couple things from the trading post if they got them, and don't cost an arm and a leg if you do go up there, Martha said. Let me find out what those preppers want to do up at the house, and we can either take them with us or drop them off going the back way and leave tomorrow. Come to think of it, I can deal with them and meet you there. I got to take Philburn's tractor back to him anyway, Ray said, watching Hop Sing walking back up to the group. I love this guy, but I sure wish we could learn him some English, Dump said as Hop Sing motioned Dump towards him. Hop Sing pointed at the tractor and then at himself and said, "We go," and waited patiently while Dump tried to digest what he wanted. Come here, Stewart. See what this guy is talking about. Ray, I think he either wants to borrow the tractor or leave, Dump said anxiously. We go Philboo, Hop Sing said as Stewart walked up. He wants you to go with you to Philburn's, Ray said as recognition set in. He must understand that we trade at Philburn's and want something, Ray said. What's he got to trade with, I wonder? I guess he's going to use some of the wife's jewelry, but what does he need he hasn't got here? Dump said, pondering the inscrutable face of Hop Sing. We are going tomorrow, Stewart said, pointing at the sun and making a gesture like it was going down and coming back up, and then pointing at himself and Hop Sing. Hop Sing pointed back at his family and held up 3 fingers, saying he wanted him and his family to go also. Melanie, you want to go too, right? Stewart said. You bet. Sounds interesting. That truck is going to be packed with you, me, Dump Truck, and the Hop Sings, though, Melanie said, thinking about the seating arrangements. Well, we're definitely going to have to do some unloading, but we can fit everyone, Stewart said, looking forward to a new adventure. Philburn's going to have a fit when he sees you got a running vehicle, let alone one with air conditioning that belonged to David, Dump said. Martha called out from the porch and told Dump to come to her. Dump shrugged and headed in her direction. Me do wants a bunch of those jars we got, and I can't seem to tell her they're no good for canning, but she can have some regular mason jars, Martha said, perplexed, looking at the table which had a case of Ball brand mason jars and a box full of leftover mayonnaise, Skippy peanut butter, etc. jars on it. Dump signed that mason jars were good for heating up in a canner, and the other kind to break, but Meadow was adamant she wanted the other ones. Well, she can have them, but I got no idea what for. She also wants some of those old baby food jars, Martha said, while Meadow was happily gathering up her goods. Well, like I said before, half the fun of having them around is seeing what they get up to next. By the way, I think we're having rabbit for supper. I saw He-Do coming out of the barn with one, and yes, he knows which ones we eat and which ones are for breeding, Dump said. Normally I would say one rabbit for all of us wasn't much of a meal, but that Hobson can stretch a piece of meat a country mile and make you think you're full, Martha said, in a rare compliment to his cooking. Martha had lived in the country her entire life, and had not been exposed to any kind of Chinese cooking, so it was an adventure any time she got nerve enough to partake of Hopsing's cooking his ethnic dishes. They got something going on over there. Usually they're getting cleaned up and getting ready to put on their fancy duds to have dinner with the guests. Today, though, it looks like they got every pot and pan we lent them, filled and bustling around like a bunch of bees, Dump said, and then wished he hadn't. I told you to watch them. Quit standing here jawing with me and see what it is they're making, Martha said, pushing Dump towards the door. Geez, they ain't going to poison us. I'm going, Dump said huffily, and started walking back towards the Hopsing's outdoor cookhouse. Where are you going, Dump? Melanie called out from the picnic table under the big old oak tree. Martha said I got to keep an eye on the Hopsing's cooking. You want to come? Dump said hopefully. That sounds like fun, Melanie said cheerfully, and rose to follow him. It ain't that much fun. We got to pretend like we're not really watching Hopsing, or he gets mad and shakes that cleaver of his at me. Chop, chop, Jimpy, Dump said, mimicking Hopsing and making Melanie burst out laughing. We'll just pretend to be passing by, and I will play with He-Do for a minute, if he isn't busy doing something, Dump said, walking towards the Hopsings and getting an instant scowl from the patriarch of the family. Meadow rushed over and took Melanie by the hand and guided her towards a big stoneware crock sitting on the bench in front of their place. Minnie, Meadow said, while ladling up some syrupy-looking liquid into a baby food jar and smiling the whole time. Melanie took the small jar and figured out that Meadow wanted her to take a sip, and did. Peach nectar! This is good, Dump, Melanie said, gesturing him over. Meadow had made it evident that Dump could only have a little bit, knowing his appetite for all things sweet, and food in general, and reproachfully stood guard over her crock of peach nectar. That is good. They haven't made that before. I bet that's why Martha's getting low on sugar, Dump said, going to get another jar full, but being playfully chased off by Meadow, using her ladle like a fly swatter to wave him away. Oh, hell, Dump, I just saw Hopsing putting chicken feet in that pot of boiling water, Melanie said. Hopsing evidently saw her observing him, and made a comical face, and waved both his hands around like arthritic claws. Martha, no, Hopsing said, grinning. I ain't so sure what he meant by that, but at least he knows not to serve them to Martha, Dump said as Hopsing pointed to his chopper and wagged a finger at him. See, I told you he would threaten me. Yeah, I know, Hopsing. Chop, chop, Dimpy, he said, laughing and gesturing for Melanie to follow him away from Hopsing's outdoor kitchen. As they approached the barn to get out of the heat, they saw He-Do stirring a large pot that evidently had come out of a military's chow hall at some time, and went to have a look. What is that? Dump said, looking at a slurry of corn and some kind of whitish liquid. Ha, Dump, I thought you were a country boy. He's processing hominy. Basically, it's corn and lime or other alkaline solution. See how the kernels are starting to swell? Melanie said, giving He-Do a pat. Well, I'll be darned. I've eaten a bunch of it, but never seen it being made. I don't know that Martha's going to appreciate them using chicken feed to do it, though, Dump said, still regarding the process, but uncaring himself what it was made out of as long as it tasted good. Let's go and see what Ray and Stewart are up to, Melanie said, and she and Dump headed back to the porch. Stewart and Ray had been debating about how long they thought it would take before any measurable recovery took place, and basically couldn't come to any measurable agreement. There were just too many variables to consider. They had decided that Ray should stay with Martha and help guard the homestead, while Stewart and Dump went to Philburn's. The Preppers would just have to wait an extra day if they wanted to ride somewhere. That evening, when they sat down to supper, they were delighted to find Hopsing had made egg drop wonton soup and had filled the wontons with rabbit meat. Not traditional, but they sure were good. He had a big side dish of garlic-flavored eggplant to go with it for everyone, and the meal ended with a piece of Martha's sweet potato pie. Everyone was quite thoroughly satisfied. "Well, I didn't see any chicken feet in the soup, and it did taste great," Martha said, unknowing of Hopsing having used the feet to make part of the chicken broth stock for his soup. How we doing?
Pause on the chapter. You can cut it off now, or we can carry on before.
Has it been long enough?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break there, folks, and next time we'll start back up on Chapter 3. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you later.
All the best.